A luxury private jet lands at JFK Airport. Isaiah Washington, 42, Black CEO of Washington Enterprises, steps out with his 8-year-old son Jamal. A flight attendant from Horizon Airlines frantically apologizes nearby. Isaiah's cold response, "Too late. Tomorrow, everything changes." Before we dive into this powerful story, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more stories of justice and accountability. Now let's see how one father's stand against discrimination changed an entire industry. Isaiah Washington hadn't always flown on private jets. Growing up in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Harlem, his childhood was defined by his parents' tireless work ethic and unwavering belief in education. Isaiah's father worked double shifts as a security guard while his mother taught elementary school, scraping together every dollar to provide opportunities for their only child. Their sacrifice paid off when Isaiah earned a full scholarship to MIT, where he developed groundbreaking security software during his sophomore year. By 26, he had founded Washington Enterprises, a tech security firm that revolutionized how corporations protected their digital assets. Now at 42, Isaiah sat at the helm of a $3.2 billion company with clients spanning every continent and industry. Despite his tremendous success, Isaiah remained grounded in the values his parents had instilled. He married Aaliyah, his college sweetheart, a brilliant Stanford-educated lawyer who had built her own impressive career before joining Washington Enterprises as chief legal counsel. Together, they raised their 8-year-old son Jamal in a spacious brownstone in Brooklyn rather than the flashy penthouses their wealth could afford. Jamal was the center of their world, thoughtful, observant, and remarkably gifted. He had inherited his father's aptitude for strategy and his mother's analytical mind, already playing chess at a competitive level despite his young age. The vintage chess set his grandfather had given him rarely left his side, each piece worn smooth from constant handling. "Check," Jamal announced one evening, sliding his knight into position on the board between him and his father. Isaiah studied the board with a smile. "Impressive move, son. When did you start planning that one?" "3 moves ago," Jamal replied with quiet confidence. "You have to think ahead to win." This strategic thinking made Jamal exceptional in school, but also made him sensitive to the undercurrents of social dynamics around him. Despite their wealth and status, the Washington family regularly encountered the subtle racism that persisted in America's upper echelons. The surprised looks when Isaiah introduced himself as the CEO at business functions, the extra scrutiny from store security when shopping in luxury boutiques, the neighbors who still sometimes mistook him for household staff when he was working in his own yard. Isaiah and Aaliyah had carefully prepared Jamal for these realities without diminishing his sense of self-worth. They taught him about his heritage, filled their home with books and art celebrating Black excellence, and made sure he understood that other people's prejudice reflected their limitations, not his value. "Never let anyone make you question your right to take up space in this world," Isaiah would tell his son. It was the same lesson his own father had impressed upon him before passing away just months after Isaiah took his company public. On his deathbed, Isaiah's father had made him promise something: never let discrimination go unchallenged. "We stay silent, nothing changes." It was a promise Isaiah had honored throughout his career, using his influence to create opportunities for underrepresented groups and holding business partners accountable for their diversity practices. Washington Enterprises was known for its inclusive workplace culture and substantial investments in educational initiatives for underserved communities. Isaiah's demanding schedule meant he traveled frequently, but he made a point of being fully present when he was home. This particular week, he had arranged to take Jamal to Atlanta to visit Isaiah's mother, who still lived in the same modest house despite her son's offers to buy her something grander. "It's important for Jamal to see where we come from," Isaiah explained to Aaliyah as they packed for the trip. "Plus, Mom would never forgive me if I didn't bring him for her birthday." "You two will have a wonderful time," Aaliyah replied, tucking Jamal's favorite sweater into the suitcase. "And his first time flying first class, he's so excited." Neither of them could have anticipated how this routine family trip would soon thrust the Washington name into headlines across the nation and become a turning point in the fight against corporate discrimination. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport hummed with activity on that Friday afternoon. Travelers rushed through the sprawling terminals, rolling suitcases bouncing behind them as announcements echoed overhead. Isaiah navigated the crowd with practiced ease, Jamal's small hand firmly in his as they made their way to the Horizon Airlines premium check-in counter. "Will the plane have those seats that turn into beds, Dad?" Jamal asked, his eyes wide with excitement. Isaiah smiled down at his son. "Not on this flight, buddy. Those are usually on international flights. But the seats will be much bigger than what we normally fly, and they bring you hot towels before takeoff." "Hot towels?" Jamal's nose wrinkled in confusion. "Trust me, it's fancier than it sounds," Isaiah laughed. At the premium counter, the attendant processed their boarding passes efficiently, though Isaiah didn't miss how her eyes widened slightly when she saw his platinum frequent flyer status. He was used to these moments of surprise, the brief, telling pauses when people reconciled his race with his evident success. "You're all set, Mr. Washington. You and your son will be boarding through lane 1. Enjoy your flight," she said, handing over their boarding passes with a practiced smile. They proceeded through security and made their way to gate C-23, where the flight to New York was scheduled to depart in 45 minutes. Jamal clutched his treasured chess set, carefully wrapped in a velvet cloth. The vintage wooden pieces had been a gift from his grandfather just before he passed away, making them doubly precious. "Can we play a quick game while we wait?" Jamal asked, already reaching into his backpack for the board. "We should have just enough time," Isaiah replied, checking his watch. They found 2 seats near the gate and set up the board between them. Isaiah noticed several business travelers glancing their way as Jamal methodically arranged the pieces. Some smiled at the sight of father and son engaged in a classic game, others showed that familiar flicker of surprise. He had long ago learned to ignore such reactions, focusing instead on what mattered, in this moment, his son's joyful concentration. The gate area grew increasingly crowded as departure time approached. When the announcement for priority boarding came through the speakers, Isaiah packed up the chess set despite Jamal's protests that they were just getting to the good part. "First-class passengers and platinum members for Horizon Airlines Flight 1382 to New York, you may now board through lane 1, the gate agent announced. Isaiah took Jamal's hand again as they joined the small line forming at the priority lane. They stood behind an older white couple and in front of a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit who was speaking loudly into his phone about quarterly projections. As they approached the gate agent, a blonde flight attendant named Meredith Wilson was standing beside her, observing the boarding process. Isaiah noticed her eyes narrow slightly as she spotted them in the priority line. She leaned over to whisper something to the gate agent, who glanced up at them before scanning their boarding passes. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Washington," the gate agent said professionally, though her tone had cooled noticeably. As they walked down the jet bridge, Jamal looked up at his father. "Dad, why did that lady look at us funny?" Isaiah squeezed his son's hand. "Some people make assumptions, Jamal. We know who we are and where we belong. That's what matters." They stepped onto the aircraft where another flight attendant, Brian Reynolds, greeted passengers at the door. His smile faltered momentarily when Isaiah and Jamal approached. "Right this way," he said after a beat too long, gesturing toward the first-class cabin. The first-class section contained just 12 seats, arranged in a 2-to-2 configuration. Isaiah found their assigned spots, 2A and 2B, and helped Jamal get settled by the window before stowing their carry-on items in the overhead compartment. "This is awesome," Jamal whispered, running his hands over the wide armrests and exploring the various buttons that controlled the seat position. Other first-class passengers filed in, most barely glancing at them as they found their own seats. But one man, the same business executive who had been behind them in line, stopped in the aisle next to their row, frowning as he checked his boarding pass and then looked at their seats with visible disapproval. This was Bradley Thompson, though Isaiah wouldn't learn his name until later. A senior vice president at Meridian Bank, Thompson was the type of man accustomed to getting his way and rarely encountering people of color in positions equal to or above his own. "Excuse me," Thompson said, addressing flight attendant Brian rather than Isaiah directly. "I think there may be some confusion with the seating." Brian approached, examining Thompson's boarding pass. "You're in 3C, sir. Just the next row." Thompson lowered his voice, though not enough to prevent Isaiah from hearing. "Are you sure these passengers are in the correct section? I've never seen them in first class before." Isaiah kept his expression neutral, placing a calming hand on Jamal's shoulder as the boy looked up, confusion clouding his features. Brian nodded and approached their seats. "May I see your boarding passes again, please?" Isaiah calmly retrieved them from his jacket pocket and handed them over, meeting Brian's scrutinizing gaze with steady eyes. Brian examined the passes with exaggerated care. "And these were issued today at check-in?" "Yes, they were," Isaiah replied evenly. "Is there a problem?" "No, no problem," Brian said, though his tone suggested otherwise. He returned the passes and moved on to assist other passengers, but Isaiah didn't miss the meaningful glance exchanged between him and Thompson. As the boarding continued, Isaiah noticed Brian and Meredith huddled in conversation at the front of the cabin, occasionally glancing in their direction. He had experienced enough subtle discrimination in his life to recognize the signs of trouble brewing, but he hoped, for Jamal's sake, that this would amount to nothing more than uncomfortable looks. He was wrong. The Boeing 737 cabin buzzed with pre-flight activity. Flight attendants checked overhead bins while remaining passengers squeezed past each other in the narrow aisle. The atmosphere in first class was more subdued, passengers settled into plush seats, accepted offers of pre-departure beverages, and powered up laptops or tablets. Isaiah helped Jamal buckle his seatbelt, making sure it was secure but comfortable. The boy couldn't contain his excitement, examining every feature of the spacious seat with wide-eyed wonder. "Look, Dad. The tray table is hidden in the armrest," Jamal marveled, discovering the mechanism. "And there's a real glass for drinks, not plastic." Isaiah smiled at his son's enthusiasm. "First class has its perks, buddy." From the corner of his eye, Isaiah noticed Bradley Thompson still watching them from his seat across the aisle. The executive leaned forward, catching flight attendant Brian's attention as he passed. "Excuse me," Thompson said in a stage whisper clearly meant to be overheard. "I'm not comfortable with my current seating arrangement. Are there any other options available?" Brian bent down to listen, nodding sympathetically. "Let me see what I can do, sir." Isaiah kept his attention on Jamal, helping him set up his tablet for the flight, but remained acutely aware of the whispered conversation happening nearby. "Those people don't look like they belong in first class," Thompson muttered, not bothering to lower his voice further. "Probably used points or some promotion. It devalues the experience for full-fare passengers." Brian straightened up, shooting a glance toward Isaiah and Jamal. "I understand your concerns, sir. Let me check on something." The flight attendant disappeared briefly into the galley area, returning with Meredith Wilson. The two conferred quietly before Brian approached Isaiah's row once again. "Excuse me, sir," Brian began, his tone professionally detached. "There seems to be a mistake with your seating assignment." Isaiah looked up, his expression calm but resolute. "Is that so?" "Yes, our system shows you should be seated in economy. I'll need you and your son to gather your belongings and move to the main cabin." Isaiah took a measured breath before responding. "That's interesting, considering I specifically purchased first-class tickets for this flight. Perhaps you'd like to check again?" Brian's smile remained fixed. "I've already verified with our system. These seats are reserved for other passengers." "Then I'd be happy to see that verification," Isaiah replied, his voice steady. He produced their boarding passes again. "As you can see, we're assigned to seats 2A and 2B, first class." Several nearby passengers had stopped what they were doing to watch the interaction. Jamal shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing the tension but not fully understanding its source. Boarding passes can be printed incorrectly, Brian insisted. Our system has the final say on seating assignments. I'd like to speak with your supervisor, please, Isaiah said firmly. Brian's pleasant facade faltered slightly. Sir, we're preparing for departure. Moving quickly would be appreciated. I'm not moving anywhere without speaking to a supervisor, Isaiah stated. We have valid first-class tickets and boarding passes. There is no mistake here except the one you're making right now. Thompson interjected from across the aisle. Some people just don't know their place, he said loudly enough for everyone in first class to hear. It's basic etiquette to comply with crew instructions. Isaiah turned to Thompson, his gaze steady. And it's basic professionalism to address concerns directly rather than making insinuations to a third party. If you have an issue with my presence here, I suggest you request different accommodations for yourself. The tension in the cabin thickened. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably while others pretended to be absorbed in their devices. Jamal clutched his chest set, knuckles widening around the velvet pouch. Dad, he whispered. What's happening? It's all right, Jamal, Isaiah assured him. Just a misunderstanding we're going to clear up. Brian had retreated momentarily to the galley, returning with Flight Supervisor Karen Miller. She approached with an air of authority, clipboard in hand. What seems to be the problem here, she asked, though her question was directed at Brian rather than Isaiah. These passengers are refusing to comply with seating reassignment, Brian explained. They've become confrontational. Isaiah addressed Karen directly. My son and I have valid first-class tickets and assigned seats, which we paid for in full. Your colleague is attempting to move us without explanation or verification. I've requested to see the supposed system error but haven't been shown anything concrete. Karen barely glanced at the boarding passes Isaiah held out. Sir, our crew has final authority on all seating matters. If they've determined you need to be reseated, then that's what needs to happen. Based on what criteria? Isaiah pressed. Is it standard procedure to single out passengers who have proper documentation without providing any evidence of a system error? Karen's expression hardened. Sir, are you refusing to comply with crew instructions? I'm refusing to be discriminated against, Isaiah replied evenly. I've asked for verification of this supposed mistake, which no one has provided. I've asked to speak with a supervisor, which took an unreasonable amount of time. Now I'm asking for a reasonable explanation. Thompson spoke up again. This is ridiculous. Just move them so we can take off. Some of us have important meetings to get to. A murmur of mixed reactions rippled through the cabin. While some passengers nodded in agreement with Thompson, others looked uncomfortable with the escalating situation. Look, Karen said, lowering her voice. We can do this the easy way, or I can call security. Your choice. Isaiah held her gaze. If you feel security is necessary to address a paying customer's reasonable request for verification, then that's your decision to make. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. She turned to Brian. Call security. As Brian moved toward the aircraft phone, an older white woman seated across from Isaiah spoke up. This is absolutely ridiculous, she said. I've been flying this airline for 20 years, and I've never seen such shameful treatment of passengers. Karen barely acknowledged her. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us when we witness injustice, the woman, who Isaiah would later learn was named Barbara Mitchell, replied firmly. But her intervention came too late. Brian had already made the call, and within minutes, 2 airport security officers boarded the plane. The appearance of security officers sent a hush over the first-class cabin. Passengers who had been pretending not to notice the confrontation now watched openly, some with phones discreetly recording. The officers, 1 white man and 1 Hispanic woman, approached row 2 with hands resting near their belts. What seems to be the problem here? The male officer asked, directing his question to Flight Supervisor Karen Miller rather than Isaiah. These passengers are refusing to comply with crew instructions regarding seating reassignment, Karen explained, gesturing toward Isaiah and Jamal. They've become combative. Isaiah remained composed. Officer, my son and I have valid first-class tickets and assigned seats. We've been singled out without explanation and asked to move to economy. When I requested verification of the supposed error, none was provided. The female officer glanced at the boarding passes Isaiah held out, then at Jamal, who had shrunk back against his seat, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Sir, regardless of the seating situation, if the flight crew has asked you to move, you need to comply, the male officer stated. Interfering with crew member duties is a federal offense. I'm not interfering with anything, Isaiah replied. I'm simply asking for verification of an error before being reseated. Dad, what did we do wrong? Jamal whispered, his voice trembling. The chess set trembled in his small hands. The question pierced Isaiah's heart, but he maintained his composure. We didn't do anything wrong, son. Several passengers had their phones out now, recording the scene unfolding before them. Karen Miller noticed and stepped forward. There's no recording allowed during this security matter, she announced loudly. Actually, there's no law against filming in this situation, called out a younger woman from a few rows back. Karen ignored her, turning back to the security officers. These passengers need to be removed from the aircraft now. They're delaying our departure. The male officer placed his hand on Isaiah's shoulder. Sir, I need you and your son to gather your belongings and come with us. Isaiah looked directly at Karen. For the record, I want it noted that at no point have I raised my voice, made threats, or behaved in any way that could be described as combative or aggressive. I've simply asked for verification of a supposed seating error before being moved from seats I paid for in full. Your continued refusal to comply is aggression, Karen responded. Barbara Mitchell, the older woman who had spoken up earlier, interjected again. This is outrageous. They've done nothing wrong. Ma'am, please stay out of this, the female officer warned. Isaiah realized the situation had escalated beyond reason. Further resistance would only traumatize Jamal more deeply. With deliberate calm, he stood and reached for their carry-on bags in the overhead compartment. Come on, Jamal. We're going to leave now, he said gently. Jamal looked up at his father, tears welling in his eyes. But why, Dad? These are our seats. Sometimes we have to choose our battles, son, Isaiah replied, helping Jamal to his feet. As they prepared to move, Jamal's hands shook so badly that his cherished chess set slipped from his grasp. The velvet pouch hit the floor, and wooden pieces scattered across the aisle. My chess set. Jamal cried, dropping to his knees to retrieve the pieces. Before Isaiah could help, the male security officer stepped forward impatiently, and directly onto the black king piece. A sickening crack echoed through the quiet cabin as the hand-carved piece splintered under his boot. Jamal froze, staring at the broken piece, his grandfather's final gift now irreparably damaged. Let's go, the officer insisted, seeming not to notice or care about what had just happened. Isaiah helped his distraught son gather the remaining pieces, carefully collecting the fragments of the broken king. The female officer, at least, had the decency to look apologetic as she helped retrieve a bishop that had rolled toward her foot. With their belongings gathered, Isaiah and Jamal began the humiliating walk through the first-class cabin toward the exit. Passengers stared, some with sympathy, others with indifference, a few with barely disguised satisfaction. I told you they didn't belong up here, Bradley Thompson muttered to his seatmate, just loud enough to be heard. As they passed through the economy section, whispers and stares followed them. Isaiah kept his head high, one arm protectively around Jamal's shoulders. But he could feel his son's body trembling with silent sobs. The moment they stepped off the aircraft and into the jet bridge, away from the eyes of other passengers, Jamal looked up at his father with tear-streaked cheeks and asked the question that would haunt Isaiah for days to come. Is it because we're black, Dad? Can you even imagine the pain of that moment? A child realizing for the first time that the color of his skin could make others treat him as less than human. What would you have done in Isaiah's position? Comment number 1 if you believe he should sue the airline immediately. Comment number 2 if you think he should go public with the story first. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination and wish you'd spoken up. The real question is, how far would you go to protect your child from injustice? Would you have the courage to stand your ground like Isaiah, or would you quietly accept the humiliation? Subscribe now to see how this father turned a moment of injustice into a movement for change in the next part of our story. The terminal buzzed with activity around them, but Isaiah and Jamal sat in silence in an empty departure lounge. Security had escorted them all the way from the aircraft to the main terminal, as if they were criminals rather than paying customers who had been unjustly removed. Isaiah had maintained his composure throughout the ordeal, aware that any display of anger, justified as it might be, would only reinforce the stereotypes that had led to this situation in the first place. But now, looking at his son's tear-stained face, Isaiah felt a cold fury building inside him. Jamal sat hunched over, carefully trying to fit the splintered pieces of his chess king back together. "It won't stay, Dad," he whispered, his small fingers struggling with the fragments. "We'll get it fixed, son," Isaiah promised, though he knew the vintage piece was likely beyond repair. The king, the most powerful piece on the board, now lay broken in his son's hands. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. Isaiah pulled out his phone and dialed Aaliyah. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, how's the flight?" she asked cheerfully. "We're not on it," Isaiah replied, keeping his voice steady for Jamal's sake. There was an incident. As he recounted what had happened, Aaliyah's lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. "This is textbook discrimination. We need to file a complaint with the DOT, the FAA, and a civil rights lawsuit against Horizon immediately. I'm calling our litigation team right now." "I'm thinking bigger than a lawsuit," Isaiah said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I need to handle something first. I'll call you back." He ended the call and turned to Jamal. "How about some ice cream while we figure out our next move?" Jamal nodded silently. Food court ice cream was a poor substitute for the trip they'd planned, but Isaiah needed time to think, and Jamal needed something to lift his spirits. As they walked through the terminal, Isaiah noticed people glancing at them, some with recognition in their eyes. He realized videos of the incident must already be circulating online. His phone buzzed continuously with notifications, messages from friends, colleagues, even journalists seeking comment. At the food court, while Jamal focused on his chocolate ice cream, Isaiah checked his email. There it was, a message from Horizon Airlines customer service. "Dear Mr. Washington, we sincerely apologize for the unfortunate incident on Flight 1382. We take these matters seriously and would like to offer you complimentary tickets as compensation for your inconvenience. Please contact our customer relations department to arrange this. Sincerely, Horizon Airlines Customer Care Team." The generic apology and offer of free tickets, as if this were a minor inconvenience rather than a humiliating act of discrimination, only strengthened Isaiah's resolve. "Inconvenience," he muttered, closing the email. His mind drifted back to a childhood memory. Sitting on his father's knee after being called a racial slur by a classmate for the first time. "People will try to make you feel small, son," his father had told him. "They'll try to put you in a box they're comfortable with. Your job isn't to make them comfortable. Your job is to be so excellent they can't ignore you, and so powerful they can't disrespect you without consequences." Isaiah looked at Jamal, who was listlessly stirring his melting ice cream rather than eating it. The boy who had been chattering excitedly about first-class seats just an hour ago now sat withdrawn and quiet, his world fundamentally altered. "You've made a costly mistake," Isaiah whispered to himself, thinking of Horizon Airlines and everyone involved in today's incident. He pulled out his phone again and called Lawrence Banks, the head of strategic operations at Washington Enterprises and one of his most trusted executives. "Lawrence, I need you to pull some information for me immediately," he said when the man answered. First, I want to know every connection between Washington Enterprises and Horizon Airlines. Every contract, every service we provide, every piece of technology they license from us. Something happened, boss? Lawrence asked, concern evident in his voice. Yes, and I'll explain later. But right now, I also need information on a Horizon Airlines flight supervisor named Karen Miller and a flight attendant named Brian Reynolds. And find out who their CEO is. I'll be having a conversation with them very soon. On it. Anything else? Yes. There was a passenger involved, Bradley Thompson. Find out who he is and who he works for. Consider it done. After ending the call, Isaiah noticed several notifications about the incident already trending on social media. Someone had posted a video with the hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack, and it was gaining traction rapidly. His phone rang, a news outlet requesting an interview. Then another. And another. Isaiah declined them all for now. He needed to execute his response strategically, not reactively. Jamal, he said gently. How would you feel about taking a private plane to visit Grandma instead? For the first time since the incident, Jamal's eyes lit up slightly. We can do that. We absolutely can. And while we're in the air, Dad's going to make some important calls to make sure what happened to us today doesn't happen to anyone else. Within 30 minutes, Isaiah had arranged for a private jet to take them to New York. As they were driven to the private aviation terminal, he received a message from Lawrence with the information he had requested. The data confirmed what Isaiah had suspected. Washington Enterprises provided critical security infrastructure for Horizon Airlines, including their booking systems, customer data protection, and, most significantly, airport security access protocols at 40% of the airports they serviced. The contracts were worth millions annually to Washington Enterprises, but that wasn't what interested Isaiah. It was the leverage. Isaiah also learned that Bradley Thompson was a senior vice president at Meridian Bank, a financial institution currently courting Washington Enterprises for their business banking needs, with a potential contract worth hundreds of millions. As they boarded the private jet, Isaiah noticed Jamal clutching the velvet pouch containing his broken chess set. The sight strengthened his resolve. Jamal, he said as they settled into their seats, do you remember what I taught you about chess? That it's not just about taking pieces, Jamal replied quietly. It's about position and strategy. That's right. And sometimes, when someone breaks the rules or plays unfairly, you need to change the game entirely. Isaiah fastened his seatbelt and looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. That's exactly what we're going to do. The pieces were set. Now it was time to play. Richard Burton, CEO of Horizon Airlines, awoke to the insistent buzzing of his phone at 5:17 a.m. Bleary-eyed, he reached for the device, squinting at the screen to see 17 missed calls, 5 from his head of public relations, 4 from legal, 3 from his COO, and the rest from board members. Something had clearly gone very wrong. He sat up, immediately alert, and called his PR director first. Richard, thank God, Melissa Chen answered, sounding like she hadn't slept all night. We have a situation that's spiraling out of control. What happened? He asked, already dreading the answer. A video went viral overnight. One of our flights removed a black passenger and his young son from first class yesterday. The passenger turns out to be Isaiah Washington, yes, that Isaiah Washington, the tech CEO. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack is trending #1 nationally with over 2 million tweets. Major news networks are running the story, and celebrity activists are amplifying it. The optics are devastating. Richard pinched the bridge of his nose. Give me the short version of what actually happened. From what we can piece together, there was some kind of seating dispute. Flight attendants claimed there was a system error and tried to move Washington and his son to economy. He asked for verification, they escalated to security instead of verifying, and the situation deteriorated from there. The worst part is when they were being escorted off, the kid dropped a chess set that apparently was a gift from his late grandfather, and security stepped on it and broke a piece. Jesus Christ, Richard muttered. What's our response been so far? Standard procedure, we sent an apology email offering complimentary tickets. But Washington hasn't responded, and the social media team is being overwhelmed. Our customer service lines are jammed, and we're seeing the first calls for boycotts. Send me the video link and draft a stronger response statement. I'll review it within the hour. And get legal to prepare for whatever's coming next. Richard ended the call and immediately watched the footage. It was worse than he'd imagined. The calm dignity of Washington contrasted sharply with the increasingly hostile airline staff. The broken chess piece. The devastating question from the child, is it because we're black, Dad? Clearly audible in the recording. Richard had been in corporate damage control for decades, and he knew immediately this was beyond standard PR strategies. Just a typical entitled customer making a scene, he muttered dismissively to himself, deciding this would blow over like most social media outrages. Have Melissa issue the standard apology and offer him some free first-class tickets. That should take care of it. Meanwhile, in New York, Isaiah Washington had been executing a carefully orchestrated plan since landing the previous evening. After ensuring Jamal was safely with his grandmother, who had been horrified by what happened, Isaiah had worked through the night with his executive team. Lawrence Banks entered Isaiah's office at Washington Enterprises headquarters with a thick folder of documents. You were right, Lawrence said, placing the folder on Isaiah's desk. Horizon Airlines uses our security systems for 40% of their domestic routes, including all their major hubs. The contract is up for renewal in 3 months. Isaiah nodded, turning his attention to his computer screen where financial data was displayed. And here's something interesting. Their stock has already dropped 6% in pre-market trading just from the social media backlash. Imagine what would happen if we announced we're terminating their security contracts effective immediately. It would cripple their operations, Lawrence confirmed. They'd have to ground flights at multiple airports until they found an alternative system, which would take months to implement properly. Isaiah's phone rang, his executive assistant. Mr. Washington, I have Richard Burton, CEO of Horizon Airlines, on the line. Right on schedule, Isaiah remarked. Tell him I'm in meetings all day but my assistant will schedule a call for tomorrow. You're making him sweat, Lawrence observed with a slight smile. This isn't about making anyone sweat, Isaiah replied, his expression serious. This is about fundamental change. Burton needs to understand this isn't a problem he can solve with an apology and free tickets. Throughout the morning, Isaiah's team uncovered more connections between Washington Enterprises and Horizon Airlines. Beyond the security systems, Washington's cloud services hosted Horizon's customer data and booking platforms. Additionally, several of Horizon's board members sat on other corporate boards with Isaiah or had business relationships with his company. By noon, news outlets were reporting that Horizon's stock had fallen 15%. Social media continued to amplify the story, with celebrities and public figures sharing the video and condemning the airline. #FlyingWhileBlack had been joined by #BoycottHorizon and #IStandWithWashington. Lawrence entered Isaiah's office again, this time with a tablet. You'll want to see this. Someone leaked internal emails from Horizon Airlines showing this isn't an isolated incident. There's a pattern of complaints about discriminatory treatment of minority passengers, particularly in first class, going back years. All swept under the rug by management. Isaiah took the tablet, scanning the damning emails. Who leaked these? Anonymous source, but my guess is someone inside Horizon who's fed up with the culture there. Isaiah nodded thoughtfully. And what about Bradley Thompson? Senior VP at Meridian Bank, Lawrence confirmed. They've been aggressively courting our business for months. The banking contract you've been considering would be their biggest client acquisition this year. Thompson leads their corporate client division. Interesting timing, Isaiah mused. Make sure our financial team knows we'll be going in a different direction for our banking needs. His phone buzzed with a message from Aaliyah, Meridian Bank just issued a statement, distancing themselves from the personal views and actions of Bradley Thompson. Looks like someone's getting nervous. By mid-afternoon, Isaiah's assistant informed him that Richard Burton had called 3 more times with increasing urgency. Each time, Isaiah delayed, knowing that every hour that passed weakened Burton's position and strengthened his own. At 4:30 p.m., Isaiah convened a meeting with his executive leadership team. "Tomorrow morning, Richard Burton will call again," he told them. "This time, I'll accept the call, but only to inform him that I'll be addressing the Horizon Airlines board directly. No intermediaries, no PR statements, no corporate doublespeak." "What exactly are you planning to do?" asked Camila Rodriguez, Washington Enterprises chief marketing officer. "Change the game," Isaiah replied simply. "Horizon Airlines has a systemic problem, and treating the symptoms won't cure the disease. They need to understand that discrimination isn't just morally wrong, it's bad business." Later that evening, as Isaiah sat beside Jamal's bed, helping him with his nightly reading, his phone lit up with a news alert. Horizon Airlines stock had closed down 31%, erasing nearly $2 billion in market value in a single day. "What's happening with the airplane people, Dad?" Jamal asked, noticing his father checking the phone. Isaiah set the device aside and focused on his son. "They're learning an important lesson about consequences, just like in chess. When you make a bad move, you have to deal with what comes next. Like when I lost my queen to Tommy at school because I wasn't paying attention." "Exactly like that," Isaiah smiled. "Except they made a much bigger mistake than losing a queen. They broke the king, and in this game, that's going to cost them everything." As Jamal drifted off to sleep, Isaiah gently placed the broken chess piece on the nightstand. Tomorrow, the real endgame would begin. 3 days after the incident, an emergency board meeting was called at Horizon Airlines headquarters in Dallas. The company's stock had plummeted a staggering 31%, wiping out billions in market value. Major corporate clients were suspending their travel contracts, and the public relations disaster showed no signs of abating. In the mahogany-paneled boardroom, tension hung thick in the air as 12 board members sat around the long table. CEO Richard Burton paced at the head of the room, his typically confident demeanor replaced by barely concealed anxiety. "The latest numbers are catastrophic," Chief Financial Officer Martin Reynolds reported grimly. "Bookings are down 60%. Social media sentiment is 92% negative. We've had over 300,000 reservation cancellations in just 72 hours. This will blow over," Burton insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "These social media storms always do. We've issued multiple apologies. We've placed the employees involved on administrative leave pending investigation. What more do they want?" The boardroom door opened, and Burton's executive assistant entered with visible trepidation. "Sir, Isaiah Washington has arrived. He's requesting to address the board directly." A murmur rippled through the room. Board member Eleanor Hawkins, one of only 2 black members on the board, raised an eyebrow. "You invited Washington here? Without consulting the board first?" "I didn't invite him," Burton admitted. "He demanded this meeting, threatening to terminate all contracts between Washington Enterprises and Horizon effective immediately if we refused. And you didn't think to mention this until now?" Eleanor's voice was sharp with disapproval. "I thought I could handle it," Burton replied defensively. "This is all just leverage for a larger settlement anyway." Eleanor exchanged glances with several other board members. "Show him in," she instructed the assistant, overriding Burton's authority without a second thought. Moments later, Isaiah Washington entered the boardroom, accompanied by a team of 4 people, his Chief Legal Officer Aaliyah Washington, Chief Technology Officer Darius Freeman, Chief Operating Officer Lawrence Banks, and a young woman carrying several tablets who was introduced as Maya Patterson, Head of Data Analytics. Isaiah's presence commanded the room immediately. Dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to having the most power in any room he entered. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice," Isaiah began, though everyone present understood it had been less of a request and more of a command. "I'll get straight to the point. What happened to my son and me 3 days ago was not an isolated incident, nor was it a simple misunderstanding. It was the predictable outcome of systemic issues within your corporate culture." Richard Burton attempted to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Washington, we deeply regret the unfortunate incident and have taken immediate steps to address." "I'm not finished," Isaiah interrupted calmly but firmly. "Maya, please share the data." Maya distributed tablets to each board member. "What you're looking at is a comprehensive analysis of customer complaints filed against Horizon Airlines over the past 5 years, categorized by race, gender, and resolution outcome. We've identified a clear pattern of discriminatory treatment, particularly toward black passengers in premium cabins." The board members scrolled through the damning statistics in shocked silence. "How did you access this data?" Burton demanded. "This is proprietary information." Isaiah smiled thinly. "Mr. Burton, perhaps you've forgotten that Washington Enterprises provides your cloud storage and data security infrastructure. The information was obtained legally through our regular system maintenance protocols." Burton's face flushed with anger, but Eleanor Hawkins leaned forward. "These numbers are disturbing. Complaints from black passengers are 3 times more likely to be dismissed without resolution compared to complaints from white passengers." "Precisely," Isaiah confirmed. "And now, Lawrence will explain exactly what's at stake today." Lawrence Banks stepped forward. "Washington Enterprises currently provides cybersecurity infrastructure for 40% of the airport's Horizon services, including your 7 largest hubs. We also maintain your booking systems, customer data protection, and employee access protocols. If these contracts are terminated without transition, Horizon would be forced to ground all flights at these airports until alternative systems could be implemented and tested, a process that would take months at minimum." The color drained from Burton's face. "You wouldn't dare. The contracts have termination clauses, which include provisions for immediate termination in cases of ethical breaches by either party," Aaliyah Washington interjected smoothly. "Our legal team has determined that the documented pattern of discrimination constitutes such a breach." Isaiah continued, his voice measured. "I'm not here for money. I'm not interested in free tickets or even a personal apology. I'm here because my 8-year-old son asked me if he was treated differently because he's black, and I had to tell him the truth. No parent should have to have that conversation because of your company's failings." The boardroom fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Even Burton seemed to deflate, sinking into his chair. "What exactly do you want from us?" Eleanor Hawkins asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the corporate landscape had shifted irreversibly. "Transformation," Isaiah replied simply. "Darius, please outline our requirements." For the next 30 minutes, Darius Freeman detailed a comprehensive overhaul of Horizon's training, policies, and corporate structure. The plan included mandatory bias training for all staff, the creation of a chief diversity officer position with actual decision-making authority, transparent reporting of discrimination complaints, and significant changes to hiring practices at all levels of the company. When he finished, Burton attempted one last defensive stand. "This is completely unreasonable. You're essentially asking for control of our company because of one unfortunate incident." Isaiah fixed him with a steady gaze. "Mr. Burton, while we've been sitting in this meeting, the individual who initiated the confrontation on that flight, Bradley Thompson of Meridian Bank, has been placed on administrative leave by his employer. The hashtag boycott Horizon has been used 2 million times in the past hour alone. 6 of your major corporate clients have suspended their travel contracts. This isn't about one incident. This is about a pattern of behavior that the market is now holding you accountable for." He paused, letting the information sink in before continuing. "You have 24 hours to agree to these terms, or Washington Enterprises will terminate all contracts and security access effective immediately. Additionally, I will be testifying before the Congressional Transportation Committee next week about discriminatory practices in the airline industry, with Horizon as the primary case study. The ultimatum hung in the air. Board members exchanged alarmed glances, mental calculations of the catastrophic financial impact visibly playing across their faces. Eleanor Hawkins was the first to speak. "I move that we accept these terms in principle and form a committee to work with Washington Enterprises on implementation details." "Seconded," said another board member immediately. "This is blackmail," Burton protested weakly. "No, Richard," Eleanor replied coolly. "This is accountability. Something this company has clearly been lacking under your leadership." She turned to Isaiah. "Mr. Washington, I believe we can work together productively on these changes. And speaking personally, as someone who has experienced similar treatment on our airlines despite my position on this board, I thank you for forcing this long overdue conversation." Isaiah nodded respectfully. "My team will provide a formal agreement for your review by tomorrow morning. I expect signatures from all board members by the deadline." As the Washington Enterprises team prepared to leave, Burton made one last desperate attempt. "The costs of implementing these changes will be enormous. Our shareholders." "Your stock dropped 31% in 3 days," Isaiah interrupted. "Your shareholders are already paying for your failures. The question is whether you want to continue that decline or begin rebuilding trust." With that, Isaiah and his team exited, leaving behind a boardroom in disarray and a company at a crossroads. Later that evening, as news of the emergency board meeting leaked to the press, Isaiah sat with Jamal in his grandmother's living room, carefully gluing the broken chess king back together. "Will it ever be the same?" Jamal asked, watching his father's careful work. "No," Isaiah admitted honestly. "The break will always be visible. But sometimes, son, the most powerful pieces are the ones that have been broken and put back together. They carry their history with them." Jamal considered this thoughtfully. "Like us?" Isaiah smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Exactly like us. And tomorrow, we'll see if Horizon Airlines can learn that same lesson." 1 week after the confrontation on Flight 1382, Horizon Airlines held a press conference at their headquarters. The atmosphere was solemn as newly appointed interim CEO Patricia Reynolds, the former COO who had replaced Richard Burton after his forced resignation, approached the podium. Behind her stood a diverse group of executives, including Eleanor Hawkins, who had been named chairwoman of the board after leading the internal push for change. "Good morning," Patricia began, her voice steady but humbled. "Today, Horizon Airlines acknowledges its failure, not just in one incident, but in fostering a corporate culture that allowed discrimination to persist unchecked. We are announcing a comprehensive transformation of our company from the inside out." Cameras flashed as she outlined what industry analysts would later call the most sweeping corporate accountability plan ever implemented by a major airline. Effective immediately, Horizon Airlines is establishing a $50 million fund dedicated to anti-discrimination initiatives, both within our company and in the broader transportation industry. We are creating a new executive position, Chief Inclusion Officer, with direct reporting access to the board and veto power over policies that could disproportionately impact marginalized groups. Patricia continued, detailing mandatory bias training for all 23,000 employees, transparent reporting of discrimination complaints, and a complete overhaul of hiring practices aimed at creating representative diversity at every level of the company. Additionally, she announced, the employees directly involved in the discriminatory incident against Isaiah and Jamal Washington have been terminated, following a thorough investigation that revealed multiple prior complaints against these individuals that were improperly dismissed. Miles away in New York, Isaiah watched the press conference on his office television, Lawrence Banks seated across from him. "They're actually doing it," Lawrence remarked, sounding mildly surprised. "I thought they'd water it down once the immediate pressure eased." "Eleanor Hawkins won't let them," Isaiah replied. "She's been fighting this battle from the inside for years. She just needed the right leverage." His phone buzzed with a message from Aaliyah. Burton just withdrew his name from consideration for the Industry Leadership Award he was favored to win. Word is he can't even get consulting gigs right now. The news brought Isaiah no joy. This had never been about destroying careers or exacting revenge. It was about forcing necessary change in an industry that had resisted it for too long. On screen, Patricia Reynolds was addressing questions from reporters. "Yes, we did offer Mr. Washington a substantial settlement, which he declined," she was saying in response to a question. "Instead, at his request, those funds will be directed to scholarships for minority students pursuing careers in aviation." Another reporter raised his hand. "What about Bradley Thompson? Has Horizon had any contact with him or Meridian Bank since the incident?" Patricia's expression tightened slightly. "Mr. Thompson is no longer employed by Meridian Bank, and we understand several other companies have severed ties with him as well. While Horizon takes responsibility for our staff's actions, Mr. Thompson's behavior was also completely unacceptable." Lawrence turned to Isaiah. "Speaking of Thompson, Meridian's CEO has been calling non-stop, begging for a meeting. They're terrified we'll do to them what we did to Horizon." "Schedule the meeting," Isaiah decided. "But make it clear that if they want Washington Enterprises business, their commitment to diversity and inclusion needs to be more than just talk." The fallout extended well beyond Horizon Airlines and Bradley Thompson. Other major carriers rushed to review their own policies and practices, suddenly aware that social media had created unprecedented accountability. Congressional hearings on discrimination in transportation were scheduled, with Isaiah set to testify the following week. That evening, Isaiah visited his mother's home in Harlem. After putting Jamal to bed, he sat with her on the worn couch where he'd spent so many evenings as a child. "Your father would be proud," she told him, patting his hand. "He always said you were meant to change things." "I just wish Jamal hadn't had to experience that," Isaiah admitted. "He's been having nightmares." His mother nodded knowingly. "That first time is always hardest, when you realize the world sees you differently. But you've shown him something more important, that he has the power to stand up and make change happen." "I hope so," Isaiah said quietly. "I know so," she insisted. "That boy watches everything you do." Today he saw his father change an entire industry instead of just accepting the way things are. As if on cue, Jamal appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, clutching his repaired chess set. "I can't sleep," he admitted. "Can we play one game?" Isaiah smiled. "One quick game," he agreed. As they set up the board on the coffee table, Jamal carefully placed the repaired king in position, the thin line of glue visible but holding strong. "Dad," he said thoughtfully, arranging his pawns, "that lady on TV today, she said what happened to us is going to help other people not get treated badly on airplanes." "That's the goal," Isaiah confirmed. Jamal considered this. "So even though it was really bad when it happened, maybe it was good that it was us and not someone else. Because you could make them change." Isaiah looked at his son with a mixture of pride and sadness at his precocious understanding. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of whether they can fight back. But yes, sometimes those of us with power have a responsibility to use it for those who don't. Jamal nodded, absorbing this lesson as he made his opening move. "Your turn, Dad." Outside, news alerts continued to ping on Isaiah's silenced phone. Industry publications were already calling the Horizon transformation a watershed moment in corporate accountability. Social media had moved from outrage to celebration of actual, measurable change. But here, in this quiet moment of a simple chess game with his son, Isaiah found the true measure of his victory. 6 months later, Isaiah and Jamal Washington stood in the first-class cabin of a Horizon Airlines flight bound for San Francisco. The atmosphere couldn't have been more different from their previous experience. Patricia Reynolds, now the permanent CEO after her successful interim leadership, personally greeted them at the gate. "Mr. Washington, Jamal, welcome aboard," she said, extending her hand first to Isaiah and then, with equal respect, to Jamal. "We're honored to have you with us today." Jamal, who had been apprehensive about flying Horizon again despite his father's reassurances, relaxed slightly at the warm welcome. Patricia introduced them to the flight crew, a diverse team that included Captain Michaela Johnson, one of the airline's newly promoted black female pilots, and lead flight attendant Jerome Keller, who had recently been appointed to Horizon's Employee Advisory Council on Inclusion. "I believe these are your seats," Jerome said, gesturing to 2A and 2B, the same seats they had been forced to vacate half a year earlier. As they settled in, Isaiah noticed subtle but meaningful changes throughout the cabin. The safety information card now featured diverse illustrations. The in-flight magazine's cover story highlighted Horizon's transformation and industry-leading diversity metrics. Even the pre-flight announcement had been updated to emphasize respect for all passengers and crew members. "Is this all because of us, Dad?" Jamal whispered, observing these details with the sharp perception that continually impressed Isaiah. "Not because of us," Isaiah corrected gently. "Because of a lot of people who decided change was overdue. We just helped create the moment for that change to happen." The 6 months since the incident had seen remarkable transformations. Horizon Airlines had implemented every aspect of the accountability plan, often exceeding the original requirements. Their $50 million fund had already distributed grants to organizations working to increase diversity in aviation and transportation. The newly created position of Chief Inclusion Officer had been filled by Dr. Maya Rodriguez, a respected expert in organizational psychology with a focus on workplace equity. More surprisingly, Horizon stock had not only recovered but surpassed its previous value. The corporate accountability measures, initially viewed with skepticism by some investors, had resonated with consumers and corporate clients alike. Bookings had rebounded strongly, with many travelers specifically choosing Horizon because of their commitment to equity and inclusion. Beyond Horizon, the impact rippled throughout the industry. 3 other major airlines had appointed diversity officers at the executive level. Congressional hearings, where Isaiah had testified alongside civil rights leaders and transportation experts, had led to new federal guidelines for anti-discrimination training in the transportation sector. The flight proceeded smoothly, with none of the tension that had marked their previous attempt. Midway through, Captain Johnson invited Jamal to visit the cockpit, an experience that left him buzzing with excitement. "She said I could be a pilot too if I wanted," he reported back to Isaiah, eyes shining. "You can be anything you set your mind to," Isaiah affirmed. As they began their descent into San Francisco, Isaiah reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The incident had been painful, especially for Jamal, but the response had created meaningful change that would benefit countless others. His thoughts were interrupted by Jerome, who approached with something in his hand. "Jamal, we have something for you," he said, presenting a small wooden box with the Horizon logo engraved on top. "This is from all of us at Horizon." Curious, Jamal opened the box to reveal a beautiful chess set carved from polished rosewood and maple. But what caught his attention immediately was the Black King. It had a thin line inlaid in gold running through it, reminiscent of the break in his grandfather's piece. "We heard about what happened to your special chess set," Jerome explained. "One of our maintenance engineers is a woodworker, and he designed this." The gold line represents an ancient Japanese practice called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken things with gold to make them even more beautiful and valuable than before. Jamal ran his finger over the golden line, clearly moved by the thoughtful gift. "Thank you," he said quietly, looking up at Jerome with genuine gratitude. "No, thank you," Jerome replied earnestly. "What happened to you helped change things for a lot of people." After landing, as they made their way through the terminal, Isaiah received a text from Lawrence. Washington Foundation scholarships announced today. 20 minority students will receive full aviation training. First recipient is Barbara Mitchell's granddaughter. Isaiah smiled at the news. Barbara Mitchell, the older white woman who had spoken up for them on the flight, had become an unexpected ally in the months following the incident. Her willingness to acknowledge the discrimination she'd witnessed and speak out publicly had inspired others to do the same. Outside the airport, a car waited to take them to a community center in Oakland where Isaiah was scheduled to speak to a group of young students about careers in technology and aviation. Jamal, carrying his new chess set, would be joining him on stage for the first time. "Dad," Jamal said as they drove across the Bay Bridge, the morning sun glinting off the water. Remember when you told me chess isn't just about taking pieces, but about position and strategy? I do, Isaiah nodded. I think I understand that better now, Jamal continued thoughtfully. It's like what happened with Horizon. You didn't just try to win by taking their pieces, you changed their whole position on the board. Isaiah looked at his son with pride. At just 9 years old, Jamal already grasped concepts that many adults struggled with, the difference between winning a single battle and transforming the entire game. 5 years later, a young man named Jamal Washington stood before a group of middle school students in a community center much like the one he'd visited with his father half a decade earlier. Now 14 and already taking college courses, Jamal had developed his own passion for teaching chess to underprivileged youth. On a table beside him sat 2 chess sets, the beautiful rosewood one gifted by Horizon Airlines, and the original set from his grandfather, the repaired king still showing its battle scars. Chess isn't just about the moves on the board, he told his young students, echoing words his father had shared with him. It's about thinking several steps ahead, understanding the consequences of each action, and sometimes being willing to sacrifice a piece for a greater victory. He picked up the broken king from his grandfather's set, which he kept as a reminder. This broken piece has a story, he continued. It taught me that sometimes the most powerful move isn't on the board at all. Sometimes you have to stand up and change the rules of the game entirely. In his office at Washington Enterprises, Isaiah watched the live stream of his son's chess class with a quiet smile. On his desk sat a frame containing the boarding passes from Flight 1382, preserved not as a reminder of injustice, but as a testament to the power of principled response. His phone rang, Patricia Reynolds from Horizon Airlines, calling to discuss their partnership on a new initiative to create pathways to aviation careers for students from underrepresented communities. Isaiah, she greeted him warmly. I just saw Jamal's class online. That young man is going to change the world someday, just like his father. He already has, Isaiah replied, thinking of the industry-wide transformation sparked by a moment of injustice transformed into a movement for change. We all have. As he ended the call and prepared for his next meeting, Isaiah reflected on something he had told Jamal in the aftermath of the incident. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. But sometimes, son, you have to flip the whole board to change how the game is played. What would you do if faced with discrimination? Would you have the courage to stand up not just for yourself but for systemic change? Comment below with your thoughts on how each of us can make a difference, even without the resources of a CEO. Don't forget to like this video if Isaiah's response inspired you, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that one person really can change the system. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful move isn't the one on the board. It's the one that changes the game entirely. This powerful story teaches us that true change requires strategic action beyond mere complaints. Isaiah Washington demonstrates how to transform personal injustice into systemic impact by leveraging influence with purpose rather than seeking personal compensation. The narrative illustrates how discrimination persists even for successful Black Americans, and that money alone cannot shield families from racial bias. We learn that accountability matters most when it leads to transformation. Isaiah's approach wasn't about revenge or public humiliation. It targeted the systemic issues allowing discrimination to flourish. By refusing settlement money in favor of structural changes, he prioritized future generations over personal gain. The story also highlights the responsibility that comes with privilege. Isaiah used his corporate position to create opportunities for those without such influence, turning a traumatic experience into a catalyst for industry-wide reform. Perhaps most importantly, we see the power of truth-telling. From Jamal's innocent question, "Is it because we're Black?" to Barbara's willingness to speak up as a witness, honesty drives the narrative forward. When we name discrimination clearly, we create space for meaningful change. Finally, the broken chess king symbolizes resilience, damage that becomes part of our story without defining it. Sometimes our most powerful moments come not from winning within existing systems, but from fundamentally changing how the game is played. What would you do if faced with discrimination? Would you have the courage to stand up not just for yourself but for systemic change? Comment below with your thoughts on how each of us can make a difference, even without the resources of a CEO. Don't forget to like this video if Isaiah's response inspired you, subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of justice and transformation, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that one person really can change the system. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful move isn't the one on the board, it's the one that changes the game entirely.